Understanding model retraining frequency has a direct impact on the performance of your machine learning model. And in last video, I have already covered what machine learning model retraining means and how we normally identify whether we need to perform any model retraining activities or not. Okay. And if you haven't seen my earlier video, I will provide the link in the description below. Okay. So just to recap, how we normally identify whether we need to perform any model retraining activity or not. So here in this diagram, if you look, I have covered three set of conditions. So this is the first set of condition where we would be comparing the data distribution. Okay. The second set of condition where we would be comparing the performance of my machine learning model, right? So the performance of my machine learning model against the new data, and we'll compare it against the baseline model performance. This third set of condition is about comparing the business metrics, right? So whatever business metrics we will have, we will compare it against the baseline business metrics. Okay. But in all those comparisons, we have one threshold of divergence, right? So we need to decide at which point we will say that these deviations are not acceptable and it's deviating from what we have observed at the time of training. So that means it's deviating from my baseline data, right? So these are the baseline data for data distribution, model performance, and the business KPI. So this is very important, picking up this threshold value. But here, it has a direct impact on your model retraining frequency. How frequently you should retrain your model has a direct impact based on your threshold value. So if you will take the threshold value too high, so which means that you will not performing retraining activity more often. And it might happen that you will not be able to deploy the optimal model in production. And here you have defined the threshold value as very high, and this will not trigger the model retraining pipeline more often, right? But on the other hand, if you choose this value too low, right? So this means that you'll be performing retraining activity more often, right? So you'll be performing the retraining activity very frequently, and which means that you are spending lots of cost for the organization, and the cost could be your resource or compute or infrastructure or whatever, right? So we need to keep a balance between too high and too low, this threshold value, and this would be chosen based on your business domain, right? Business domain, or based on your experimentation, what you have observed in past. Based on that, you can optimize this value so that we are not setting this value as too high, and at the same time we are not setting this value as too low. So that's the very important factor you need to consider while determining how frequently you need to retrain your model. Okay, so that's the first aspect. The second aspect you need to consider about how frequently you should retrain your model, and again that will depend upon your business domain. And here I have given a simple diagram to explain what it means. So here on the left side I have given the less changing environment to always changing environment. So that means my environment is dynamic. My environment is dynamic. So the possible use case would be real-time trading, right? Cyber security. I mean, these are the dynamic environment, and things will change in a minute or sometimes in hours of time, right? So real-time trading, cyber security. So we categorize these as always changing environment. But on the other hand, like banking fraud, it's also dynamic, but the rate at which things will move in the banking fraud would be relatively less as compared to cyber security and the real-time trading, right? As we move towards the left side, right? So the environment would be less flexible, right? So economic model does not change very frequently, right? So if you look real time trading, as it's a very dynamic environment, so we need to perform an online learning, right, which would be more effective for this domain perspective, right? Because we cannot wait for longer time to apply the machine learning model changes in the production environment, because things will change in seconds or sometimes in minutes or hours. The best way to apply those changes in the production environment is to perform online learning. Okay, so for the cyber security, again we can decide that it could be either hourly or daily. For the banking fraud, it could be monthly. Okay, voice recognition, it could be 3 to 6 months. Economic model, it could be yearly. And depending upon your business requirement and the use case, right, you can decide the appropriate frequency, right, and how frequently your data changes, right, because this is the key factor, how dynamic your environment is and how frequently your data changes, and based on that you can decide the appropriate retraining frequency. Okay, so just keep this in mind in which domain you are in, and just consider these aspects while determining your model retraining frequency. Okay, so just to summarize, in this video we have seen how we can calculate the model retraining frequency in an online mode. So which means how we can derive that value in a production environment based on the model drift check. And in next video, we will see how we can calculate the retained frequency in an offline mode. So which means how data scientists can use different train and evaluation data to calculate the retaining frequency at the time of training and evaluation phase. Okay, so that's it for now. I hope you'll find this video useful. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I request you to subscribe to it. And thanks for watching my video.